Hello everybody and welcome to another video. Of course it is the beginning of the month, so we're back to Patreon requests, once again coming from Bladed Thesis. And today he's asked me to look at Asking Alexandria. Now this is a band I have heard of, but I don't think I've ever actually listened to any of their music. I know the band, I've heard of them, like I say. But I'm pretty sure I've never heard any of their music. I might have heard some in passing, but I wasn't aware of it. And I know nothing about the band either. So I wanted to look them up, find out a little bit more. And what I've found is Asking Alexandria are an English rock band formed in Dubai, United Arab Emirates, now based in York, North Yorkshire. It's a bit of a trip, isn't it? They're now consisting of guitarist Cameron Liddell, possibly, not Liddell, like the grocery store, drummer James Cassells, vocalist Danny Worsnop, and bassist Sam Bentley. Now, the band was initially formed in 2006 by Ben Bruce, who appears to no longer be in the band. The band officially established as a six-piece in 2008, with the founding lineup consisting of Bruce, Worsnop, Cassells, Liddell, Joe Lancaster and Ryan Binns. After the departure of Lancaster and Binns, as well as the recruitment of Sam Bentley in 2009, the band released their debut album, Stand Up and Scream, in 2009. The band then went on to release two more studio albums, Reckless and Relentless and From Death to Destiny, before the departure of Danny Worsnop, who apparently is now back in the band. So he left in 2015. He was replaced by Dennis Stoff, and the band released The Black in 2016. Stoff then departed from the band in October of that year, and Worsnop came back. The band then released their self-titled fifth album in late 2017, which was a marked stylistic departure from their previous work. The sixth studio album, Like a House on Fire, which was released in 2020, showed the group's continuity of a more straightforward and melodic hard rock sound, while also shifting into different genres. Its follow-up in their seventh studio album, See What's on the Inside, was released in 2021, and the eighth album, Where Do We Go From Here, was released in 2023. So there you go. It says here that the genres are metalcore, heavy metal, post-hardcore, hard rock, electronicore, which apparently electronicore is more of their early stuff. But it says at the beginning that it's an English rock band, so they started off different from how they sound now. Apparently so. Now, Bladed Thesis has specifically asked me to look at the track Alone in a Room, and more specifically, the acoustic version. There must be a reason behind that. I don't know. Now, like I say, I have no idea what this band sounds like. Like I said, I have heard of them. I just don't know anything of their actual music, as far as I'm aware. So I don't know what to expect going into this. I've got lyrics here, but I could find them on Genius Lyrics, and as we know, they're not quite as reliable as most other places, but sometimes they do us proud. So yeah, I'm not sure what to expect from this, so we'll jump straight into it and see what we've got. But before we do that, if you could just take a moment to like and subscribe if you haven't already, it would really, really mean the world to me. I've been doing this for nearly 7 years now, and not even 3% of people watching my videos are actually subscribed, which is a little disheartening, because I like to think I do something different than most other reactors. They just look at a song, go, yeah, I like it, no I didn't, and that's about all you get. I like to talk about what the songs are about, what the meanings are, and the morals and themes and stories inside the songs. So, I like to think I do something a little bit different. I might ramble on for a little bit, but, I find that sort of thing interesting, and I thought other people might. Anyway, let's jump into this track and see what we've got. So, Alone in a Room, acoustic version, by Asking Alexandria. Let's have a look.
I've been away a little while. Sometimes I just can't help myself. My mind's running wild. I seem to lose grip on reality, and I try to disregard the crazy things the voices tell me to do, but it's no use. I try to own it, write songs about it. Believe me, I've tried. In the end, I needed to breathe, find inspiration, some kind of purpose, to take a second to face what makes me me. All I needed was the last thing I wanted, to sit alone in a room and say it all out loud. Every moment, every second, every trespass, every awful thing, every broken dream. A couple years back and forth with myself in a cage, banging my head against the walls, trying to put words on a page. All I needed was the last thing I wanted, to sit alone in a room, alone in a room. Seen the world a couple times, trying to cure the ache with absence, but the hole's still a hole, and my mind kept playing tricks on me, feeling older every day. Took everything I had to not crash and burn, but I'm starting to learn. Sometimes I fall down, sometimes I lose hope. Those days will be few if I keep my feet on the ground. I might be lonely, but I ain't alone here, so I keep pushing the limits of what makes me me. All I needed was the last thing I wanted, to sit alone in a room and say it all out loud. Every moment, every second, every trespass, every awful thing, every broken dream. A couple years back and forth with myself in a cage, banging my head against the wall, trying to put words on a page. All I needed was the last thing I wanted, to sit alone in a room, alone in a room, alone in a room. 'Cause I can be better than I was. I can be better than I am. All I needed was the last thing I wanted, to sit alone in a room and say it all out loud. Every moment, every second, every trespass, every awful thing, every broken dream. A couple years back and forth with myself in a cage, banging my head against the wall, trying to put words on a page. All I needed was the last thing I wanted, to sit alone in a room, alone in a room, alone in a room.
Hey, what are you doing in here?
Right. Well, there you go. Alone in a Room by Asking Alexandria. That's quite a powerful and heartfelt piece of music, that. And I do believe there is quite a story going on behind this. And it's all to do with Danny, the singer there. And you can tell in the performance of the song that it is something that is deeply important to him, something that means a lot to him. Excuse me. And from what I understand, this is talking about him coming back to the band after taking that hiatus that we mentioned at the beginning. Excuse me. Because it seems like he was having a lot of trouble with substance abuse, you know, addictions to alcohol and drugs and, you know, that sort of sex, drugs and rock and roll sort of lifestyle. And he was struggling with it. And he needed to take himself away, get his head right, and then come back, essentially, which is seemingly what he's done. And he's pouring all of his heart and soul into this performance. I'm intrigued to see what the regular version of it is. You know, they say this is the acoustic version, so there must be another version of this which is possibly a bit more heavy. I don't know, because like I say, I don't actually know asking Alexandria's music that well, but you could tell near the end, you know, he put a bit of sort of harshness and reverberation into his voice, you know, so you can tell he is capable of much stronger, more visceral sort of lyrics. But here he's still got a quite powerful voice when he's singing like this, you know, and he's got a good voice, you know, and you could tell in the performance of the song it was a really personal sort of story that he was telling. So let's have a look at what he said. Excuse me. I've been away a little while. Sometimes I just can't help myself. When my mind's running wild, I seem to lose grip on reality. And I try to disregard the crazy things the voices tell me to do. But it's no use. I try to own it, write songs about it. Believe me, I've tried. In the end, I needed to breathe. Find inspiration, some kind of purpose, to take a second to face the shit that makes me me. Now, he didn't actually use face the shit to make me me in this version of the song. He actually removed the profanity from the line. You know, he just said to face what made me me. Here. But, you know, I've been away a little while, so obviously he's talking about the fact that he wasn't in the band for a couple of years. You know, he's basically saying, I took some time away from the band because I needed I needed to get away from the struggles I was having. You know, I was struggling with drugs, I was struggling with alcohol addiction, you know, and he even says, I tried to own it and write songs about it. So, you know, he tried to write songs about it, and from what I understand from the brief things that I've read, he actually wrote several songs on previous albums, possibly, talking about, you know, drugs and alcohol, you know, trying to face his own demons and stuff like that. One song that was cited as a song called Creature, you know, he basically got wrapped up in the sex, drugs and rock and roll sort of lifestyle that seems to afflict so many people in metal bands. You know, it's very easy to get wrapped up into that sort of thing, you know, sort of not necessarily peer pressure, but like when you're out on the road and touring and doing all that, it's very exhausting. And you're guaranteed at some point to come across at least one person who's using something to make it easier. And whether or not someone's gone, look, try this, and, you know, this will help you, this will keep you awake, this will give you the energy you need to carry on doing what you're doing. Or if he's just gone out for himself, you know, sort of gone, I need something to pep myself up, I need something to keep me going. I don't know. It's very easy to fall into those habits. Lord knows when I was in a band, you know, I got offered things. I always refused because I'm very, very much against those sorts of things. Although saying that, I did become addicted to alcohol at one point, and I got help for that. But, you know, it's very easy to fall into that trap when you're constantly touring, when you're surrounded by that sort of thing regularly. And he's saying, you know, he stepped away from the band because he needed to get away from that sort of thing. And he tried to write songs about it, you know, tried to talk about his experiences, but essentially his head was so fucked up from all of the drugs and the alcohol that it was just going nowhere. You know, he says, believe me, I tried. In the end, I needed to breathe. You know, he tried to make something of it. He tried to use it, but in the end, it was just too much. He needed to step away. You know, I needed to find some inspiration, to find some kind of purpose, to take a second to face what made me me. So, you know, he realised, you know, I've got to sort of step back and re-examine myself, you know, because when I'm on all these substances. I'm not who I am anymore. I'm a different person. I'm not the same person who I used to be. So I need to take a step back and sort of rediscover myself, essentially. And then it goes into that chorus. All I needed was the last thing I wanted, to sit alone in a room and say it all out loud. Every moment, every second, every trespass, every awful thing, every broken dream. A couple years back and forth with myself in a cage, banging my head against a wall, trying to put words on a page. All I needed was the last thing I wanted, to be alone in a room. Alone in a room. So I like the way that's been worded. What I needed was the last thing I wanted. You know, I didn't want to have to isolate myself. You know, he was addicted to that sort of lifestyle. You know, he was addicted to the, like I said, the sex, drugs, rock and roll, that sort of lifestyle. Normally, like when you're in a band, you're surrounded by fans, you're surrounded by groupies, you're surrounded by people who want to know you, to get close to you. You know, you're constantly surrounded by people, and that in its own sort of way can become a bit of an addiction. It's not something I particularly prescribe to. I'm very much a loner. You know, I refer to myself as a bitch hermit because I spend most of my life by myself, which is quite depressing sometimes. But anyway, you know, he's saying, you know, he enjoyed the attention, he enjoyed all the people being around him, but what he needed was to separate himself from everything. You know, he didn't want to separate himself from that, you know, because he liked being surrounded by all these people, but he needed to. He had to step back. He had to take a moment to just sit by himself, reorganize his thoughts, you know, and sort of sort shit out. You know, he needed to sit alone in a room and say it all out loud. So basically admit to himself that he had this problem. And that's what he needed. Every moment, every second, every trespass, every awful thing, every broken dream. So, you know, again, talking through, like, you know, I've made these promises and I've broken these promises all for the sake of chasing this lifestyle. You know, I've hurt people with my addiction, basically. I've made mistakes. I've done bad and terrible things, possibly. You know, I've missed out on things. You know, it says there, every broken dream. So he's had aspirations to do something, and because of his alcohol and whatnot abuse, you know, he's ended up missing out on these things. You know, there's a possibility that he might have been so wasted he might not have even been able to perform one night. You know, and that's something that's happened with a few bands. I mean, you look at Scott Stapp from Creed. You know, he once went on stage so utterly drunk out of his mind he couldn't even get through the first song of the set. You know, and they got a lot of backlash from that. He was so out of his mind that he couldn't perform. So he could be saying that he's made that mistake here. I don't know. You know, I don't know the band well enough. You know, a couple years back and forth with myself in a cage. So maybe he's like sort of bound. You know, he's tried to get away from it. You know, maybe tried doing it by himself, and it subsequently failed, sort of bounced back into it and then gone, no, I need to stop, and sort of kept swaying back and forth into this sort of thing. You know, and found himself in a cage, so he finds himself trapped. You know, he wants to do something with it, but he's stuck. He doesn't know how to go forward. He's literally imprisoning himself with his addiction, as it were. You know, banging my head on a wall, trying to put words on a page. So he's trying to write about things. He's trying to write songs. He's trying to put his thoughts onto paper, and he's essentially failing because his mind is not his own. He has no control over his mental faculties, essentially. You know, and he wasn't being able to do, essentially, the thing that he loved to do. Because, you know, when you're in a band, you love doing what you're doing. You know, I really miss being in a band. You know, and you know, my first ever band that I was in, Repulsive Vision, I used to love working with them. I really enjoyed working with them. I'd love to still be doing that, but I can't because I live so far away from them. And then the other band that I was in, you know, they ended up kicking me out of the band because, you know, I was more interested in taking care of my family who were really, really struggling than, you know, going out of my way to do that. But I actually loved doing it. You know, I really did enjoy doing what I did. You know, and he's struggling to do the thing he loves because he's fucked up, basically. Excuse me. I saw the world a couple of times, tried to cure the ache with absence, but that hole was still a hole, and my mind kept playing tricks on me. Feeling older every day took everything I had, to not crash and burn. But I'm starting to learn. Sometimes I'll fall down, sometimes I'll lose hope, but those days will be few if I keep my feet on the ground. I might be lonely, but I ain't alone here, so I keep pushing the limits of what makes me me. So, I saw the world a couple of times, tried to cure the ache with absence. So, he's basically saying, I saw the state of myself, I saw what was going on, and I tried to cure the ache with absence. I tried to stop, I tried to curb that urge, that ache, that need for more, whether it be drugs or alcohol. You sit there and go, oh, I could just do with a little bit of XYZ substance, and he basically tried to cut himself off cold turkey, just back away, let it go. And he tried to, it seems that he tried to do that by himself. And he says there, but that hole was still a hole, and my mind kept playing tricks on me. So, he tried to cut it out, he tried to leave it there, but it had become such a routine for him that it left a massive gap, basically, in his day-to-day life. He was sitting there and going, normally I'm doing something about this point in time. Normally when I'm feeling like this, I'll go and do something in particular. And it's the removal of that substance or whatever from his life has left this gaping hole. And he's got nothing to fill it with. And his mind keeps playing tricks on him, saying, oh, maybe you should, just a little bit, maybe just a little bit, maybe just a little bit more, maybe a little bit more. He'd been using substances pretty much his whole life, apparently, from what I've read. And, so it's left quite a considerable gap. And he doesn't know what to do with it. Feeling older every day took everything it had not to crash and burn. So, these substances take their toll on you. They essentially ruin your body. Lord knows, something as simple as alcohol. You can sit there and go, oh, I can stop any time I want to. And you'll stop, and then you'll go, well, I haven't drunk for 3 or 4 days, I think I deserve a drink, and then you just sort of fall back into it again. And it takes a toll on you. Obviously, it does a lot of damage to your body. And, it took everything he had not to crash and burn, it took all of his strength not to fall back into that old habit, not to just go, fuck it, I give up, give me some XYZ substance. But I'm starting to learn. Sometimes I'll fall down, sometimes I'll lose hope. So again, he'll hit a dark point, he'll get like a major depression on or something like that, and he'll be like, maybe I should just give up and carry on the way I was. I'll fall down, I'll lose hope, I'll feel like what I'm doing is futile because it is so hard to get over these things. And it really is, believe me, I've been through it. Not with drugs, but with alcohol, as I've mentioned on here before. But those days will be few if I keep my feet on the ground. So if, it's going to be hard, there are going to be days I'm going to want to give up, but those times, those days where things will get hard will become less and less if I keep trying, if I keep pushing forward, if I keep finding new ways to sort of distract myself from these thoughts, rather than sitting there going, oh, I'm doing nothing, what do I want? Oh, I want a beer, for example. I'll get a beer because I'm bored. Rather than doing that, find something else to occupy yourself, play a video game, go out for a walk, or, just do something, find something to occupy yourself instead of, falling back onto an easy bad habit, basically. I might be lonely, but I ain't alone here, so I keep pushing the limits of what makes me me. He realises, he's come to the realisation, I might be lonely. I've got no one understands how I'm feeling at the moment. You know, I've got no one that can actually empathise with me on this level, you know. And, you know, there's a possibility that his substance abuses might have cost him friends. He might have lost some friends because of it. But he also knows that there are people out there that do care for him and will look after him. For example, maybe the members of the band, you know, maybe they've tried to support him all through his absence from the band. You know, they might have still been there going, you know, you're right there, bud. Do you need any help? You know, if you're feeling bad, come talk to us. You know, we're still your friends. You might not be in the band anymore, but come see us, come talk to us if you need us. You know, so he says, I'm not alone here. So he could mean within the band, you know, because he has friends there. And I keep pushing the limits of what makes me me. So I'm pushing forward. I'm determined to rediscover myself and go back to who I used to be before I started relying on these, possibly. Then it goes back into that chorus. All I needed was the last thing I wanted, to sit alone in a room and say it all out loud. Every moment, every second, every trespass, every awful thing, every broken dream. A couple years back and forth with myself in a cage, banging my head against a wall, trying to put words on a page. All I needed was the last thing I wanted, to be alone in a room. Alone in a room. Then there's a little sort of refrain of saying lonely, 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 because it is a very lonely thing when, you know, when you're isolating yourself, trying to get your head right, you know, and, you know, like I said, you may have pushed people away with these substance abuses. And then it goes into a bridge saying, I can be better than I was, I can be better than I am. All I needed was the last thing I wanted, to sit alone in a room. So I can improve myself. I can go back to the way I used to be. I can make myself better than I used to be. I just need to keep working. I need to keep pushing. I need to, you know, keep putting the work in, make the effort, and, you know, make myself a better me, essentially. And then it goes back into that chorus. All I needed was the last thing I wanted, to sit alone in a room, yada, 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 blah, blah. You know. So, you know, it is quite a deep and meaningful song, and you can tell by the performance within that video that it meant a lot to him. You know, it's something he felt very strongly about. You know, he knows that he had struggled. He knows that he had made mistakes and that he'd done things wrong. You know, he may have lost friends, he may have pushed people away, you know, he may have lost relationships or whatever because of his substance abuse. And he came to this realization, I need to step back, I need to get my shit sorted. And that is, you know, it's a cliched phrase, but that is the first step, is admitting that you actually have that problem. You know, and as soon as you can come to terms with the fact that you do have a problem, that makes what follows that little bit, it's not going to be easier by any means, but it will make it that little bit easier. You know, because instead of like friends and family saying, right, you've got a problem and shoving you in rehab, you know, at that point, you haven't come to terms with the fact that you have the problem. You will essentially still be in denial. You know, you'll be like, I haven't got a problem, I can stop whenever I want to. You know, I'm, you know, blah, blah. But everybody else can see that what you're doing to yourself. But as soon as you make that realization yourself, it does make things that little bit easier. Because now you know that you have that problem now, and you have that mindset that you want to do something about it. And like I said, I've experienced this, you know, 'cause it's been about 2 years, maybe now, maybe a year and a half. I can't remember. It's been a while since I came to terms with the fact that I did have a problem with alcohol. You know, I was relying on it way too much. You know, I was using it to cope. I was using it to help me sleep, you know, because I live in a very isolated place. You know, I have essentially no friends within a very long distance. You know, it would take me about an hour and a half, maybe longer, to drive to my closest acquaintance, let alone friend, you know. So, you know, I was basically using it as a coping mechanism to deal with my depression, you know, my loneliness, my anxiety, and, you know, I was using it to help me sleep because I have suffered with insomnia for years. And eventually I sort of came to the realization, you know, I'm drinking 2 bottles of red wine every night. This is a stupid thing to do. This is really bad. You know, I was drinking 2 bottles of red wine and other alcoholic beverages on top of that every day. And, you know, I had this sort of eureka moment, as it were. You know, the realization of, this is stupid. I am doing nothing but fucking up my body. And I actively went and sought help. Because he even made an allusion to it here. He tried to just go cold turkey and do it himself. And not only is that really, really difficult, it is potentially dangerous. You know, for example, with myself, with the amount of alcohol I was consuming, if I had just stopped completely flat out, I would have died. Because the way it affects the chemical makeup of your brain, the way it affects the way your mind works, the way your body works, it became reliant on that substance. And just cutting it straight out, everything would have just collapsed in on itself. Not like literally, but, you know, it would be a sudden shock to the system, essentially. And the body would kind of go into a form of shock. And it could potentially kill you. So cutting yourself off cold turkey is actually quite a dangerous thing to do. But the important thing to do is to actually seek help. Because trying to do it by yourself is really difficult. Because you've got no one to sort of back you up, essentially. You know, you can sit there and go, right, I'm not touching alcohol, I'm not doing this, that, and the other. And then all it takes is, for example, like it would have been for me, you know, going out to a local supermarket and you just sort of go, just one. And then you sort of grab one alcoholic beverage off a shelf and you drink that. And then next time you go to the shop, you go, just one. And then you get one, and then you go home and you drink it. And then eventually that just one grows into 2, maybe 4, maybe 8. And you end up falling back into that old habit again. You know, and, you know, what I ended up doing, I ended up falling in, I ended up going into non-alcoholic beer. Now, a lot of people make jokes and, you know, take the piss out of non-alcoholic beverages. You know, it's like, what's the point in that, this, that, and the other? You know, it's stupid. What's the point? Why bother? It's very helpful. Very, very helpful. You know, because you basically trick yourself into thinking that you're having alcohol. But you're not. You know, and it was a very useful... I still drink non-alcoholic beer now. Because... well, it's one of those things, like, if, say, for example, you're a designated driver, you know, you don't want to be sitting there drinking bloody Pepsi or Coke all night. You know, you want to feel included. You know, you can get alcohol-free gin, you can get alcohol-free wine, which, by the way, is horrible. You know, I like wine, I love wine. I still have it very occasionally, but not very often. You know, I love wine. I tried so many different alcohol-free wines, and they were vile. Bloody disgusting. But anyway, you know, so, you know, alcohol-free beer is actually very, very helpful. It's very useful, you know, because, you know, when you're the designated driver or you're the teetotaler, you know, you want to feel included, and rather just sitting there drinking lemonade or Pepsi all bloody night, you know, you feel like you're having a beer with the guys or, you know, with your friends. You know, so it does help with the overall feeling of the night. You know, you don't feel like you're missing out, essentially. But also, when you're trying to get off of alcohol, it's a very good placebo, basically. You know, and that's what I ended up doing, you know, and I actually had a support team that I had helping me, and that's what he needed here. You know, he tried to do it by himself, and, you know, he kept sort of falling back into old habits and struggling, and, you know, he said at one point, you know, where was it? You know, I might be lonely, but I ain't alone here. So, you know, he got that support system, you know, of people that would help him, you know, saying like, you know, say for example, he might have gone to a bar or something with friends, you know, one of those friends might have been like, you don't need to have a beer or a whiskey or whatever, have one of these non-alcoholic ones or something like that, you know, and people sort of reassuring him, not necessarily talking him out of it, as it were, but they were reinforcing his attitude, you know, because he wanted to stop, but he was struggling to stop by himself, so he needed those other people around him to go, look, you're trying, you're doing so well, don't fuck it up now. You know, so that's what he needed. He needed that support team behind him. So it's an important thing. And the fact that he's written this song, you know, because it's a very deeply personal thing to do, you know. It's not something you want the world to know about. You know, people don't want to know that they are vulnerable. They don't want to know that. They don't want people to know that they fucked up, that they struggled, that they made mistakes. You know, people are so, not necessarily proud, but, you know, they don't want the world to know that they've done something dumb. You know, so to open up and write songs like this, it's a very powerful thing to do, and it's something to be respected. Even if you don't like the band, even if you don't necessarily like the song itself, it's something that still needs to be respected, because this guy has gone, look, I made mistakes, I had struggles, I was a mess, you know, but I tried really hard to get myself fixed. This is the story of my journey, and it's something really to be admired, and it takes a lot of courage, I think, to do that. You know, I've essentially just spilled my guts here about, you know, what I did. You know, I struggled for years with alcohol addiction for a very, very long time, and I was fooling myself. I was lying to myself, saying, no, I'm not addicted to alcohol, but essentially, you know, it comes to the point when you're throwing the second empty wine bottle into the trash, you're like, what the fuck? You know, this is just messed up. So, you know, and, you know, to be perfectly clear, I do still occasionally have an alcoholic drink, but not nearly as much as I used to. But, yeah, so there's, yeah, I think this should be respected. And like I said, his performance of it, you could tell it was something he was passionate about. He felt it deeply, and you heard that in the performance. So, yeah, it's an interesting song, and, you know, I like the fact that it has such an important, deep meaning behind it. And this is what I keep talking about as well. You know, I say, you know, I like to think I do something differently than other reactors, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. You know, because to look directly at this song, you know, to read the lyrics, you might get some sort of semblance or idea is talking about someone struggling. But would you know the depth of the story that it was telling? I don't know. Because a lot of people seem to think that heavy metal, rock or whatever, it's all about violence, anger, aggression, you know, murder and sex and stuff like that. And, you know, he was saying this is who he used to be. But he needed to change it. And, you know, to talk about the meaning behind this song, it's really deep, it's really important. How often do you find that sort of thing in popular music? It's not very often. You know, you get Taylor Swift singing songs about how horrible her 32nd boyfriend was. You know, and you got all these other people singing about bitches and hoes and money and shit like that. It's so shallow and vapid. You know, and then you get really deep, meaningful songs like this within the hard rock and heavy metal sort of area, and people just ignore them because they think that heavy metal is all about violence and Satan worship, you know. And that's why I talk about songs. That's why I do what I do, because metal and rock are so misunderstood and misinterpreted. I think it's important to have this discussion. You know, this might mean something to someone else. You know, this song alone might help someone through. You know, because music is that powerful. You know, just one single song can be the biggest support you could possibly find. I know I've used music to support me at times. You know, when I've been struggling, I would put on a certain song and it would lift me up, or I would go, yeah, that's how I'm feeling, I understand it. And, you know, that song sort of let me vent. And that's why songs like this are important. You know, he's talking about his personal experience, and he's come out the other side of it with a positive attitude. He has succeeded. He's basically going, look, you might be struggling, so was I, and look at me now. I managed. So can you. That's why it's important, I think, to look at and discuss songs like this. Some people might not like it, and some people might think I'm just rambling on for hours on end talking bollocks. I think it's an important part. But anyway, I have rambled on for quite a long time. So I'm going to leave it at that. So if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like or a subscribe if you haven't already. It would really, really mean a lot to me. You know, like I said, I've been doing this for about 7 years now, close to 7 years now, and not even 3% of people watching my videos are actually subscribed, which is a little disheartening because, as I was just saying, you know, I like to think I do something different, you know, talking about what the songs are about, you know, and very few, if any, other reaction channel really actually does it. You might get someone who occasionally sort of dips into it, but I don't think they really talk about it in depth. They don't really investigate and explore it, which is what I like to do. So, you know, if you could like and subscribe, you know, it costs you nothing, takes a fraction of a second, and it does make the biggest difference to me and the channel. But anyway, yeah, like I said, that's about all I've got for you for this video. Thank you all very, very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
All I needed was the last thing I wanted, to sit alone in a room and say it all out loud. Every moment, every second, every trespass, every awful thing, every broken dream. A couple years back and forth with